So the Guardian has come out with their 100 best players right now, and it changes from year to year. But we wanted to look at it from a U.S. perspective because not only is the list out, but the dearth of American players on that list has given rise to, some opinion out there that U.S. soccer, who a lot of people, despite criticisms, believe is heading in a positive direction, may not either be heading in that direction or may not be moving in that direction as quickly as people make it out to be. Mosse, did I preface that correctly?
Yeah, the English newspaper The Guardian at the end of every year puts out a list of the 100 best players in the world for that year. They have a panel of experts. And so that list just came out. England had the most players, 13, followed by France with 12. Erling Haaland was number 1, Jude Bellingham 2, Kylian Mbappe 3. Messi was 10th, Cristiano Ronaldo 27th, by the way. But there were no Americans. And so this journalist, Graham Ruthven, I think is his name, who writes for The Guardian but covers American soccer, he came out with a follow-up column titled, "Whatever Happened to the U.S.'s Golden Generation?" And the headline is a bit clickbaity. The column itself is a bit more measured than that. He does acknowledge that the U.S. has produced lots of good players who are competing in the top leagues in Europe, including some that you could have made a case belonged on this list. But he uses the fact that there's no American on this list as a jumping off point for a larger thesis that I think we can actually agree with, that the U.S. has yet to produce that one true global superstar. And even nations that are probably inferior to the U.S. overall have produced that player. Case in point, number 1 on this list is a Norwegian. And he goes through all the different countries. There's a Georgian on here, a Ghanaian, etc. And so what say you? Do you think it's problematic that as we sit here in 2024, the U.S. still doesn't have a global superstar? Or where the U.S. is at in their development as a soccer nation, that's okay? How do you see all this?
So, okay, a couple of things. Number one, if the starting point is why hasn't the U.S. produced a Messi? Well, the reality is that only one country in the world has produced a Messi. And I think the point is that why haven't the U.S. produced a recognized worldwide, world-class type of star? And again, that's where the argument starts as to, what was Christian Pulisic, or what was, I don't even know, Claudio Reyna. And, you go back in different points. But in this day and age where the hype machine is there, but also the attention machine, and therefore the global eyes that are able to be on a player, there is still yet to be that player that has emerged, the likes of which, we see when it comes to the Messis and stuff like that. I don't think that means that the U.S. hasn't progressed. I don't think that means by any stretch of the imagination that the U.S. can't beat anybody in the world or can't win a men's World Cup. As it pertains to this actual list, though, okay, when you go through this list and you're going through, 62, Onana from Manchester United, the goalkeeper. All right. I mean, are you kidding me? I'm not saying that he's not a good goalkeeper, but if this is the best 100 players in the world right now, according to the Guardian, and I see what a Weston McKennie is doing, and I see what a Christian Pulisic is doing over there. And again, there are biases and baggage and histories that come with all of these types of articles, and everybody recognizes that. And there are slants and shadings that where the article is based, what language, what culture it comes from, all of that I get all of that. But I do think right now, when it comes to 100 players in the world, that you can make a compelling argument for someone like Christian Pulisic, who in the past has been on this list, but has not been on this list now for 5 years or so. But what he is doing right now, because this list is meant to reflect right now, okay? Which is why when I go through, Marcus Rashford at 67, okay, Marcus Rashford, who is probably at his lowest point of his entire career, but it's all relative to who he is and this star that he once was. I guess he's still a star, but the star that he once was relative to his ability right now is a very different star than he is right now to his ability. So again, I can go through this list and I can make a compelling case for, I think right now it comes down to, let's be honest, Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, and probably a Jedi Robinson, who we just talked about earlier, in terms of where you can put them right now. Jedi Robinson, there's a reason why a lot of people are looking at him as potentially that left back for that next level. It's because consistently right now, he is among, and maybe even people at times will argue, the best left-sided defender when it comes to what he is doing right now in the EPL. So, yeah, I mean, I have fallen victim to this clickbait type of thing, and I love it. I love that discussion right now. Mosse, do you think that any American has any case to be made here for a top 100 position, especially now looking at some of these names?
Yes, I do. But I do think his thesis is correct that the U.S. has yet to produce a true global star. Certainly, there's no American player that belongs in the top 15 or 20 here. And so the question would be, for the U.S. to go to that proverbial next level and become an elite nation that can win World Cups, do they have to figure out a way to produce that level of player? And is there something they're doing wrong right now that's preventing that from happening? Or is it just sort of the natural evolution of things where you got to crawl before you can walk, and just producing lots of good world-class talents that are good enough to play for big clubs in Europe is the next step? And then the next logical step after that will be producing an Mbappe, a Haaland, and that's coming, and we just have to be patient. I mean, how do you see that?
Well, first off, just because you produce one of those stars doesn't mean that you are not. First off, it doesn't mean you're going to win the World Cup, let alone even qualify for the World Cup. All right. So I mean, who is number one on this list? Erling Haaland, right? So again, it doesn't mean that everything is going to be great from a international perspective for that team. I would push back in that while that one player, I think he's right, has not emerged yet. And, it's kind of like in Star Wars, there is another. There is another hope out there. We just haven't found him yet. And we keep trying to anoint players that have come along in the past, and they haven't lived up to the likes of an Erling Haaland or a Harry Kane or a Kylian Mbappe, or, in this list. I'm fine with this list when it comes to this top 10. I do think it's interesting that in this moment, Messi is 10, even with what he did in MLS. And I think that there is a bias that is exhibited right there, because don't tell me for a second that any of these teams that these players play for ahead of Messi right now, and whether it's a Bayern Munich for Harry Kane, PSG for Kylian Mbappe, Real Madrid for Jude Bellingham, or Man City for Erling Haaland. Don't tell me that any of these teams, and Mo Salah, by the way, that's 7, wouldn't take Messi, even now with what Messi is right now.
I agree.
That's how good he is.
You can tell that they don't know what to do with Messi and Ronaldo right now. So they kind of split the difference. They still have him on there, but lower than they probably should be. I agree with you. Messi at 10th is ridiculous to me. And Ronaldo at 27. Ronaldo scored over 50 goals for club and country this year. He was the leading scorer in the world, and he was still scoring goals for Portugal in Euro qualifying. Now, I've talked about on this podcast that who he's scoring the goals against, you could definitely pick at that, and I don't think he's one of the best players in the world anymore, but 27 feels like this weird split the difference. Either just own the fact that you think Ronaldo is not a relevant player anymore based on the league that he's playing in, or you still put him up there. You know what I mean? It feels kind of random to have him at 27.
Let's go to who's 100. All right, Marcus Thuram from Inter. All right, Warren Zaire-Emery from PSG is at 99. Ollie Watkins from Aston Villa is at 98. Denzel Dumfries from Inter is at 97. Alphonso Davies coming in at 96. I think Alphonso Davies should be much higher than 96. By the way, anyway, it's a fun list to look at and then do that compare and contrast with American players. But I will say this, and we can move on from this conversation, which is interesting. Not necessarily what I'm going to say, but the conversation about who should or shouldn't be in this list is interesting. I do think that American soccer is heading in a positive direction, even though that player does not exist. I do think that the things that are being done are producing better players, but I guess more importantly, more players. And I do think that at some point in the future, hopefully within my lifetime, there will be that player that everybody around the world recognizes as someone that every team and every country in the world would love to have on their team. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for an American to actually do that. And again, it won't necessarily translate into World Cup success, but I would agree that there has yet to be that player. But again, relative to most of the rest of the world, we've been doing this for a very short period of time. And again, we like to kick ourselves for what we haven't done. And sometimes we have to say, it's all right, we're heading in the right direction. I'd be much more concerned if I thought we were heading in the opposite direction or a wrong direction or not getting there as fast as we wanted. But it's been pretty unprecedented in terms of the growth that has happened when it comes to American soccer. Mosse, anything else before?
Yeah, last thing. If you read the article, he does completely dismiss the notion that it has anything to do with the U.S.'s best athletes not playing soccer. He devotes one sentence to that and says, oh, that's hogwash, and then moves on to talk about other potential reasons why the U.S. hasn't produced that superstar. But we know that's always a hot button topic on Twitter, so that's probably worthy of more fleshing out than he gave it.
Well, again, the best athletes, American athletes playing soccer wouldn't necessarily, just from a pure number standpoint, I guess you could make the argument that it would potentially produce better players. But again, if you take the best athlete in basketball or baseball or football and have them play soccer, it doesn't always translate. And so who knows? Maybe there will be a different form of athlete if everybody only played soccer in the United States that would arise. But it's not as simple as saying, well, this best athlete from basketball, if he or she played soccer, they would be great, and American soccer players would be that much better off going forward because there's a different type of physicality and there's a different type of athlete for all of those individual sports that don't necessarily make great soccer players. Not saying they can't, but they don't necessarily make it. You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops twice a week right here on my very own YouTube page. The only way to stay up to date is to hit that subscribe button down below. Size the day, and see you soon.